I will say that one of the best investments we ever made was we actually took some more bunk space and actually made a creep area for the calf and fed a separate diet for the calves. And that has paid back in terms of economics. Even when we feed a little bit higher quality diet to those calves, some higher quality forage so we don't get as much room and fill so we can get a little bit more nutrients into them, it pays back to do that.
So you also kind of stumbled onto something that tied back to some of your postdoc work, right? With dealing with some of the antagonistic pressure of high sulfur in some of those co-products. So the combination of limit feeding and then feeding some relatively high sulfur diets, what were some of the challenges that you've picked up with that?
Yeah, so the first thing to recognize is I think it's a combination of high sulfur, high nitrogen, and high potassium. So because distillers actually has all of those in fairly high amounts. But what we were seeing is that we were getting basically grass tetany. For those of you who know what that is, that's basically magnesium deficiency. And it's not because the diet was actually low in magnesium. It was just like a similar situation to out on fresh, green, cool season pastures in early spring that are high in nitrogen and high in potassium. Well, we have the added bonus of high sulfur, which also interferes with magnesium absorption in the rumen. So what we were having was a situation where we had plenty of magnesium in the diet, but it was not getting absorbed. And so we were seeing when these cows were lactating on those diets, we would get sometimes it would just be, the cow was aggressive and maybe a little bit twitchy, but then every now and then you'd have one die. And after some sampling of actually the herd, we started realizing, wow, they're low. And we had some producers that were seeing the same thing. And so I kind of dug into it and, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we were getting low magnesium. Well, what's the solution? Everybody knows the solution. We just add more magnesium into the mineral. The problem is that we were using a coproduct balancer mineral, which is formulated mostly for feedlot situations. It's high calcium, which is what we need because we have a high phosphorus diet, but it doesn't have a lot of magnesium in it. So we learned that we really did need to have a custom mineral made for lactating cows on high co-product diets. I'll also tell you for producers who are like, well, I don't use that stuff. The other one where I saw it several times were producers who had lactating cows in confinement for some reason. It may be that just pastures aren't ready yet, and they were feeding a lot of alfalfa. So alfalfa hay can also be high nitrogen and high potassium, and sometimes you'll run into that. So just make sure that if you have a lactating cow, you're feeding a lot of distillers or you're feeding a lot of alfalfa, that you go ahead and go on a high mag mineral.
Yeah, I think we think the sulfur and magnesium probably forms some sort of precipitate there in the rumen that prevents it from being absorbed